if you deploy like multiple hotspots in a location, they need to know the right angles to maximize their earnings. If you have an IoT miner, you want to know like which miner has been connecting with which other miner. We were mining Helium miners when there was only like, I think like 5,000 miners on the network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unleashing DePIN Podcast. My name is Tyler. I am your host, and I'm super excited for this next episode of the podcast. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode format for today, but one that I am very excited to have. We've got Emilio, the CEO of Moken, on. Emilio, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Excited to have a chat with you.
Absolutely. So this is going to be fun. We're going to chat a little bit about your background, kind of how you got into the space, what you've been doing, what you're working on, how you're helping folks, builders, deployers get into DePIN, and you've also got a tool that is really, really important for those that are actually deploying that we're going to do a live demo on. So that's one of the things that's going to be pretty fun. But maybe for those who aren't aware of who you are, kind of what you're doing, can you just give a quick background for everybody?
For sure. So look, from our side, we started mining. Well, first of all, like I think that the important thing for people to understand is that we're a group of friends, actually. We're a group of friends that started like mining helium together, like I think like 3 or 4 years ago. And we each had our own like startup businesses, but like this one really like took off. Like it really like it started off as a side project just for fun. But the mining and the opportunity and whatever Helium was building at the time was super exciting. So we kind of all ditched whatever we were doing and got together, and we started a business with friends all together. And from that point, we started initially like mining Helium miners, and we were like among, we were mining Helium miners when there was only like, I think like 5,000 miners on the network. So, and we kind of like deployed at the time, I think around like 300 miners as a group.
And this is back in the IoT days, right?
IoT days. Yeah, exactly. IoT days. And then from that point, we kind of like build a reputation in our own city, that we could like help people better mine. And at the time, we're like, okay, well, look, instead of us continuously mining helium, how about we become a retailer and help people at scale mine? And that was a little bit of philosophy of how we went from deployers to like retailers of hardware.
That's amazing. So you started off as deploying, and then you started helping projects or individuals actually deploy these, get access to deploying these hardware. Was that wasn't through Moken specifically, right? That was through another company, another project. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So people know about it. It's called Helium Deploy. And Helium Deploy was a brand. And the reason why it's called Helium Deploy is because we were deploying helium. That was like why we call it Helium Deploy. And so we started like importing helium miners from distributors like at the time. I don't think they're around anymore, like Syncrobit, or like even Bobcat and all these like good companies. And we started importing these miners and started putting them on the market. And we were helping clients answer questions like, what kind of elevations do we need to deploy it at? How do you position the at the time, was it like do you have to use an 8 dBi antenna, a 10 dBi antenna? What's the differences? And all these kind of questions. So we help thousands of clients mine IoT at the time, and now like obviously like Wi-Fi and mobile and CBRS. But at the time, we were just helping a bunch of people deploy these miners in a proper manner.
Yeah, and the challenge at the time was, it was new. There's a lot of technical complexity around deploying, but the other thing that was really interesting is what's different from today, where you've got, the indoor and outdoor units from Helium. I think there's maybe one other manufacturer. At the early days of IoT, there was a lot of different manufacturers to be able to buy from, right? That was one of the unique, kind of differences. There was so many options that people could buy directly from your site. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, look, it started off as like actually not having enough options. Like there just wasn't enough options initially. There was like Bobcat and maybe Syncrobit and maybe Nebra at the time or something. And then like a whole range of options came to the market, and there was so many different miners, so many. And what people were afraid at the time is, okay, so which one of these miners is going to be functional for a long time? Because many of these miners, because they're small startups, like they're just making their products as they go. And many of these miners like kind of like didn't work after some time. So we were kind of helping the consumer base in Helium make decisions about which miners they should focus on, essentially. And then the other thing that was super important is a lot of retailers just like scammed a lot of people. like many retailers never delivered on their miners, and that was a big thing. Like a lot of clients like just paid money and never got their miners. So we were focused on, delivering miners for clients that paid for them, and that really like helped us build trust in the industry.
Yeah, and so one of the things that was pretty amazing is that as the DePIN space started to grow with Helium Deploy, you started expanding from beyond just the IoT side of Helium and started offering more DePIN projects. Where else did you expand beyond just the Helium IoT with the Helium Deploy side and helping other deployers get access to new types of hardware?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time it was only Helium, but then like Helium, like, Helium is a front runner in that industry, and a lot of other companies look, to Helium, and they're like, wow, we can do similar stuff like for different industries like Demo and IceMapper and now WeatherXM and GeoNet. So Helium all, inspired these companies to do what they're doing today. And that's why our consumer base was then asking us to help them like get into other projects and help them get hardware for other projects. And that's how we got into it for like retailing these other projects. But what we also saw as an opportunity with Helium was when they were, and they're still deploying in the United States, but a lot of the Helium consumer base was like put out of the market because a lot of the consumer base are in Canada and in Europe and Asia and South America, and they couldn't deploy CBRS radios or Wi-Fi. So this is where we brought Moken into play, and we're like, look, what if we build a marketplace where deployers could actually deploy radios, they can find locations, they can deploy it, go on rooftops, make it for you, and then you would just like pay these deployers to manage your hotspots. And that's how we got like, thousands of people on the Moken model across like Europe, Canada, South America, mining Helium in the United States. Yeah.
That's amazing. So talk a little bit about Moken. What was the transition from helping people get deployments to really what Moken is today? And you've got some new tools and things you've been developing and building to bring that to fruition and make that even a wider opportunity for folks.
Yeah, well, look, honestly, it all started off as like us looking at our, we did a financial projection. We're like, shit, like only US people could deploy in the United States. That literally kills like 75% of our consumer base, because our consumer base is, in Europe, in Canada, South America. And we're like, wow, that's gonna affect our numbers. So we started getting creative. We're like, how can we like still involve these people into the market? So it all started off by answering questions like this. And then on the other side of the marketplace, we started speaking with deployers. And these deployers were like, look, I don't actually have the capital, to keep on deploying a lot of locations, but I have a lot of locations. And, you take a regular deployer who knows how to go on a rooftop, knows how to deploy video. What he wants to do is get paid for the installation and then managing the radio. And then what we understood from the other side, if you speak with European potential clients, they're like, all we want to do is own a radio. So we're like, okay, well, here there might be a good opportunity to pair these two, stakeholders together. So we kind of did a startup way, which we just like improvised something. So we went on our website and we just like added a radio to be sold in the US in Miami. And we're like, we'll see if it's gonna sell. And we kind of put it like pretty pricey just to see if it can make sense for the margins, if the deployer can get paid, if it can make sense for everyone. I think at the time we put it for like, it was one radio for like $2,000 or $3,000 on our website. And it sold within like 5 minutes.
Wow.
Like within 5 minutes, it sold immediately. And we're like, holy, what is going on? And many actually start selling. And then we're like, wow, well, we're out of radio. So we're like, okay, there might be a potential model here. And this is where we created the whole Moken model with deployers meet like people who want to buy these radios, and we match them together.
That's super cool. So basically, you made a matchmaking service for the international market to be able to have these deployment opportunities in the US where they otherwise would not have had that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that helped a lot into deploying a lot of radios in the US, because there was that missed opportunities. Like we spoke with deployers, and deployers told us, look, I have a lot of locations, but I just don't have the capital to keep on deploying. So if you help me, and we're like, look, we also don't have unlimited capital, so we can't do that. But we could pair you with someone who is interested in getting a radio managed. And honestly, that created a lot of like a lot of regular people, a lot of regular like folks, installers in the US just became like pretty wealthy like in December, because they were like now managing 100 radios. And then they became like pretty wealthy when the mobile price like did well.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. It was definitely a nice Christmas bonus, if you will, if you had been deploying early on. When I first bought my CBRS, I got really interested and excited about this opportunity. I thought this whole DUI thing is going to change the world. I'm not going to just talk about it. I'm going to actually do it. Personally, I didn't do it from I think I'm going to make a bunch of money and get rich off of it. But all of a sudden, when you started seeing that token price go, I'd be like, oh my goodness gracious, this is big, you know? And so if you were someone that had purchased dozens or hundreds, like you mentioned, then you were doing pretty well or pretty okay. It wasn't, nobody was upset by any means.
No one was upset, but it was a big surprise because for the longest time, people were like, okay, like what is, like, it was like pretty like, you know, constant for a long time. And then like, surprisingly, it just did super well.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely amazing. So you solved this big problem for people internationally being able to access deployment sites in the United States. That was sort of how Moken started. You've been building all additional tools. You've got an Explorer. You're able to help people find, you know, access points within the US. You can see APs, whether they're CBRS, Wi-Fi, IoT. You've got a new tool. Can you talk about some of the tooling that Moken's building and providing for the DePIN community?
Yeah. So like, first of all, our philosophy the whole time has always been like, build stuff to the network and then like, you know, monetize later. We like, our first goal is to deliver value to the consumer base. So that's why our Explorer is for free. Most of our tools are for free. So yeah, one of the tools that we're building, well, the many tools that we're building right now is, number one, we have a helium simulator. So one of the things that people don't really do well when they deploy like either Wi-Fi or CBRS at the current moment is if you deploy like multiple hotspot in a location, they need to know the right angles to maximize their earnings. And that's not exactly obvious. Because, and the difference, we've done a lot of like case studies, and the difference could be pretty significant. Like if you get the right angle, you can potentially like double your rewards on some of these locations, which is insane. Like it's just about like positioning it like in like 30 degrees more, you can double your rewards. It's kind of interesting. The second thing that people are not getting well with when they deploy Wi-Fi units is the overlapping coverage. So one of our tools right now, as I said, like you can go on, it's on the Explorer. It's called the Helium Simulator. You can just put your address, and we will automatically give you options of what is your rewards if you deploy one radio, what is it going to look like if you deploy two, and what does it look like if you deploy three. So you can make a wise decision on, you know, what's the best options for your deployment. And now the other thing that we're also working on is the DePIN tracker. So, and that came from,
and this is your new tool, by the way.
That's a new tool. Exactly. And that came from speaking with a lot of customers, and a lot of customers telling us like, look, I have to like scroll through GeoNail, WeatherXM, Debo, SwordChain, Helium to just like get an understanding of what is going on with my fleet of miners. And that thing is pretty significant in terms of time. So users were not actually doing it on a weekly basis. They're like, I'll do it every like 3 or like 4 weeks or whatever. And when we spoke to users, we're like, well, aren't you afraid that you're missing rewards? And they're like, yes, I am probably missing rewards, and it doesn't make me feel, you know, completely at ease. But, you know, I'm not going to do it daily. I'm not going to scroll through all these different apps. So this is where the idea really came from. We're like, okay, well, what if we abstract all these different apps into one, and we'll just tell you what is going on with your fleet? It seems like a simple thing, you know, it seems like obvious now, but yeah, it just came from speaking with a lot of users. See, the thing that we do a lot of the company is we do like a lot, like we speak with a lot of customers, and that's when like some of our customers, sometimes they call for me randomly in the middle of the day. I'm like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Hey, can I speak with you a little bit and try to get a little bit of insights from you? And I think that's all we're trying to do. We speak with customers, we try to understand their problems, and sometimes we get it, and most of the time we don't get the right features, and most of the time we get, you know, most of our products actually like don't hit the spot with our consumers, but some of them do, and I think the DePIN tracker is one of them that actually is going pretty well.
Yeah. Well, what the Unleashing DePIN podcast is all about is trying to help people that are learning about DePIN unlock that insights and information. And as someone that does deploy a lot of hardware all across the United States, as soon as I saw it, I thought this is incredibly valuable for me. And I know that if it's going to be valuable for me, I'm sure it's going to be valuable for other people that are learning and trying to get deployments going. And so that's why I was like, we have to get a demo of this on the podcast, because I know that people are going to be wanting to use this because it's really valuable. So I think it's probably a good time we should jump into actually showing people what the tool is.
Yeah.
Let's do a demo of it. Let's jump into it.
For sure. Right before we do a demo, I'm actually curious, like, as a person who's really curious about consumers, I wasn't aware that you're actually like a super user of this app, but I'm very curious, like, what was your alternative before this app? Like, what did you do in your current like journey before you'd had the introduction to DePIN Tracker to manage your fleet?
That's a great question. It was really cumbersome. So a lot of apps that we would use to manage, like, I'll use Helium, for example. If we had all of our Helium deployments that were across the country, we would use the Helium Deployer app. We would have things like on a spreadsheet to basically track estimated traffic and estimated details that we would use as part of our model for when we'd want to go and before we'd actually get the deployment side up. And then, as you're going through and you're scrolling where all the rewards are every day, that's a cumbersome process. And when you have, even if you have 10 or 15 units that are deployed, just trying to go through and see what the actual data is with that's pretty involved, and it becomes very timely. So if you're able to, or be able to aggregate that or show that in a way more uniform fashion, that's a no-brainer just alone. And then being able to visualize it, have it in a more condensed, form factor, that's really great. But yeah, it was, spreadsheets, different applications, trying to manage it through a handful of different services. There was a, Helium Geek, we would use that. And, you've got a bunch of different, all your different hotspots listed out. But it was just cumbersome because you're jumping back and forth through different things. You're trying to, if you're doing this with partners, which inevitably you have to, when you're talking about, dozens and in our case, almost 100 different deployments, it's a lot. And all the stakeholders that are involved to try to share that information with, if you need to do payment splits. Yeah. So anyway, that's the way that we were managing things. I don't know if that's a totally cogent explanation for you, but
I get it. I absolutely get it. And just like you said, it's we were trying to avoid people using all these different apps, all these different spreadsheets. So just one. And do you mind just Helium, or are there also type of networks?
Yeah. So we have XNet units that are deployed. XNet is a little bit more difficult because they don't have a lot of dashboards and tools right now to use for trying to get data. I have a demo unit that's online. That's just a single unit. And then I've got basically every project that's been on the podcast. I've got like one version of their hardware that is out in the wild. And we just have those, either like at our house or something that's set up, with friends and whatnot. So,
yeah. So exactly, like, that's the other use case why we build that tool specifically. It's also like for the people who are mining the different networks, because if you're mining the different networks, you'll have to like go for an app for every network. That's how the current industry has been built so far. So there's probably like a focus on Helium, there's a focus on XNet. So we're like, what is this aggregation for all these networks in one app? But yeah, if you're up for it, we could jump into the product demo.
Let's do a demo, man.
All right, let's do it. So I'm assuming you're seeing my screen right now?
Yeah.
All right, so awesome. So right from the Explorer, the Moken Helium Explorer, we have all of the same tabs. So Helium coverage simulator is the thing I was speaking about a few seconds ago. So you can go there and you can create a simulation for your miner to like make sure that you have it positioned in the best angles. And that also works for even existing miners that are deployed. So you can pick an existing miner that are deployed, and we can probably optimize it. We're getting a lot of usage for this. That's practically a no-brainer for anybody who's deployed Helium, because, like, you could improve your rewards by easily like 25%, 30% if you have the right angle, and maybe sometimes a lot more. But essentially, like, the DePIN tracker is right here. It's also on the tab on the Explorer. So right now, in my view of, the different miners that I, let's say, manage, and in that single view, I could see like my Helium miner, my IoT miner, my GeoNet miner. And if I had I don't have currently what I send in that dashboard, but if I did have, I would also see it. So I also get notifications right to my phone when any miner goes offline. So I could, make sure I turn it back online and not miss rewards. And that is specifically important for the Helium miner, because you don't want to miss a heartbeat, which is like your daily rewards. So in your dashboard here, you can obviously add more miners if you'd like to. But but you could also see your aggregation of rewards. So this is the sum of how much I'm making, but you can also see it per mobile tokens, IoT, or GeoNet. And then you can see each miner in a more specific way in terms of what needs to be done or what needs to be upgraded. But the other thing that's super important is when you go on your ore review, and that's what we try to do. It is we try to pair it. If something is wrong with your miner, we try to pair it with the we're building like that. That's a pretty new thing. So that is more of a trial. But what we really want to do is whenever you have a miner that actually has problems, and I don't see it right now on my live version. So that's probably a feature that's upcoming. But essentially what's going to happen is that if your miner is down, you'll be able to click here on it, and it's gonna redirect you to our Ask AI bot. And then the Ask AI bot is going to tell you what's up with your miner. So you can just like give it the name of your miner, and it's just going to diagnose it and tell you how you need to fix it, essentially. So these are really the three things we want to do for consumers. A, show them the list of all of the miners that they're mining and show them what is going on. And if something is up, we want to send you an immediate text message to your phone and email and make sure that you're well aware of it. And the second thing is, if there's something that's also problematic with your miner, we want to like ping you and tell you how to fix it using like our AI tool, because the problem is really in two folds. People, number one, sometimes are not aware if something goes wrong. But number two, if something goes wrong, they're not aware of how to fix it. They don't know what's the actual solutions.
Right.
And what we did is that we like packed a lot of documentation to our AI tool, and then our AI tool could go through like, look, in that circumstance, this is exactly what you need to do, and etc.
Yeah. And by the way, as someone who has deployed a lot of hardware, there are quite a few different reasons for why hardware can have issues and go down. And so that's such a useful thing to have, because you don't know, there's something with the hardware that just needs to be reset. Do you have an internet problem? And so being able to just get a notification about it, that's amazing, because you don't want to miss heartbeats, because that can affect your earnings. And the fact that you can just ask the AI, that's amazing. But being able to visualize it in a dashboard is so great, because otherwise you're bouncing around apps, being able to show people. And if you've got, other stakeholders, especially as you're doing large scale deployments, you've got people that you're either splitting rewards with, or if it's pertinent for them to know the information and be able to see that data, you can do it now in such an easy way. And it's great. Plus you're doing it across projects, which is a huge plus, because usually folks have more than just one type of hardware deployed.
That's a surprising thing that we discovered, like, I think a few months ago. A lot of people are actually mining a lot of different projects. And it makes sense, because DePIN is about getting the right locations. And once you get a location, you want to maximize it. It's hard to get a location. And if you have it, you want to put a GeoNet on it. You want to put a WeatherXM, XNet, Helium.
That's amazing. So what else are you thinking about adding to the DePIN Tracker tool? Like, are there other features and functionalities that you've heard from users or customers that you're planning on adding in the future?
Well, one of the things that we're discussing internally is a clearer view of how your miners are, like all your different miners are interacting with the data. So like, one of my co-founders, Rory, I think you spoke with him right before this chat, is we're thinking of making a map where you can see like on a map all your different miners well displayed, the data that you're transferring. If you're driving a depot, we want to show you maybe the route that you've been taking, and if you're driving with Hive Mapper, the same thing. So like a visual representation of how all your miners are actually working, instead of just being a static list like it is right now. We believe that these miners are actually providing value to the world. So we want to help you. We want to tell the story of how your miners are actually contributing to that effect.
That's super awesome. It's amazing having all these tools at people's disposal now, because, at the end of the day, it's more than just plugging something in and getting money for it, because it's part of a bigger problem that you're solving, and the compensation is directly related to that problem that you're solving and being a contributor towards. And so it's amazing that you've got so many different facets along that kind of value chain.
Yeah. Like the way that we see it is that we make a lot of bets in the ecosystem. We build a lot of tools and we make a lot of bets. And as I said earlier, like 9 bets out of 10 they're not going to work. but there's going to be one that's going to be like massively successful. Like our Explorer is one of these bets that worked pretty well for us. We're like, it costs a lot of money to build, a lot of money to maintain, but eventually like it was pretty good in terms of, you know, and it was well received by the community. And the Moken, you know, marketplace was something similar, also well received by the community, but we had a lot of different stuff that, you know, people just didn't care about. And like the DePIN Hub, like we were working on DePIN Hub last year, and that we had to kill because the metrics were telling us that people don't really care about this.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we didn't do it properly.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it could be a multitude of different factors that affect it, but at the end of the day, there's a real value in what you're building now, and I think it's quite clear by the metrics and just where the market's going. Are there any intersections between your Explorer and the tracker that may come into play?
Such a good question. So that has been the constant debate in our company. Like, what is an Explorer and what is the DePIN tracker? Because there's so much overlap. Just like you're pointing out, you know, like you have an Explorer, and essentially, like the Explorer should help you diagnose if something is wrong. And the way that we kind of like separate these states is the following: Explorer is for like deep data. So like you want to know like heartbeats, you want to know like very precise, you want to know beacon, you want to know like which, if you have an IoT miner, you want to know like which miner has been connecting with which other miner. Explorer is made for that. And the DePIN tracker is a simple version. It's like an abstracted version. It's like for maybe the regular miner, the person who's not going to go that deep, but just want to see a list of his miners and just understand how his fleet is performing. But the Explorer is made for deeper users who are like more precise about how they want to deploy, get more data about their miners and stuff. That's a distinction we've been making. We were tempted to, you know, blend these two things together. But we decided not to. We decided to keep the Explorer for like very advanced or more advanced data than the DePIN tracker. Our vision for the DePIN tracker is to keep it as simple as possible. It really comes out from the fear or prompt for people being intimidated by looking at different Explorer. And we want to like do the opposite. We're like, don't worry about like understanding all these Explorer. We'll give you like a simple understanding of all these different apps.
Yeah, and I think that's appreciated and B really needed for people, because it can be quite intimidating because there's a lot of complicated factors that can go into, you know, this deployment, this DePIN, this crypto thing that's just nuanced and new and difficult in a lot of respects. So I think that's quite intuitive to have that be the approach that you're taking, and appreciate it from people in the space who want to see the widespread adoption of this happen.
Yeah, because, you know, we speak with users, and it's funny, like users would sometimes be intimidated of like we speak with users who have a lot of locations, and, you know, they're sometimes intimidated of jumping into, for example, WeatherXM. And we're like, well, WeatherXM is a very simple, if you install a CBRS radio, you definitely know how to install a WeatherXM. And, you know, but the problem, just like you pointed out, is a lot of these people were like, okay, but now I'm going to have to learn that whole thing. And then just the learning part, you know, avoids them entering the market. So just like you pointed out, like our goal is to really reduce that barriers to entry and be like, don't worry, if you're not installing it and you have locations, we got you.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like I said, as soon as I saw the tool come out, I knew the value right away. Just being someone that's in the space deploying these things, I wanted to help share the message, because I think people need to get on this and start using it as much as possible. If you've got one unit that you're deploying, or if you've got hundreds of thousands, it's definitely a value add that you should be involved with. Emilio, what else do people need to know about with Moken? Are there other things that you're working on? Are there new ideas that are coming down the pike that you want to share, or just other updates that you think people need to know about?
Yeah, like our goal right now is to add all the different networks to that tool. So we know that we're also missing a lot of different networks. Right now, we only have 3 main networks. I think we have GeoNet, WeatherXM, and we have Killian, of course. Our goal will be to make sure that people are served with all the different networks, and that includes soon to be SwordChain, Demo, Fry, Crank. So we want to make sure that this comes, like, the surprising fact is that people actually mine a whole range of different networks. And it's like, people think like they're mining really the main ones like Helium, but surprisingly people are mining just like you mentioned, like XNet and different types of miners. And our goal will be to add these different networks to that tool and make it more solid. that's going to be our focus right now. The other thing that we're exploring, and that's just me exploring, ideas. But
Sure.
there's definitely something I'm thinking of something where we have that data about what you're mining, and what we're wondering about is if we make it public, if we make your mining public, if your profile public of what you're mining, could that help other users get together and seeing when we say put a face on a person, put a profile on a person, like you're that person, you're in the ecosystem, but now we can maybe make your dashboard public and show people that you're mining maybe a lot of different miners and have
a leaderboard.
Yeah, something like this, exactly. Something like this. And the benefits are not yet clear to me of what that could do, but definitely right now I feel in the ecosystem it's just people don't it. I see it as maybe the LinkedIn of the DePIN space. You have your LinkedIn profile where you have your CV and your accomplishments and everything like this, and that's your professional view for when you apply for a job or something like this. I think the DePIN space, it could be interesting to have that same abstraction and knowing what people are currently mining, knowing what different people could maybe help you on it. I think one of the benefits that could come from this is if I know that somebody is mining Helium, Geonet, WeatherXM, maybe I can ask some questions about how to optimize my miners. Maybe we can help one another. So that's something we're exploring right now, make it a little bit more public.
Yeah. Well, I know just kind of riffing on that idea a little bit, one of the things that I'm constantly doing as someone that is always buying hardware and trying to deploy is I'm always talking to people that have access to new locations for saying, hey, I've got a business that needs, another Helium deployment or an XNet deployment. And so if you were able to find other people that are constantly getting access to these restaurants or retail spots, that might be a useful thing that you can find them and say, hey, I want to buy 5 hardware devices. Can I work with you? And we can, do some kind of rev share. Because otherwise it can be intimidating or challenging to find some of these spots. But if you're able to go to a leaderboard and say, this person's doing it really consistently, that could be pretty interesting or pretty useful to help find those people who are doing it on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to build on top of your idea, if it was public that you're mining at all these different locations and you personally decided not to put an XNet there, but somebody could potentially just poke you and be like, look, I'll put it on your location. I'll split rewards with you. And here are all my different locations I have access to. I think that makes a lot of sense because one of the things that people are really having trouble in the DePIN space is actually just finding quality location, which is a hard thing.
Yeah.
So if we can make that public for people and they could be like, okay, well, these are all your different locations that you have access to. I want to put a Geonet there. I want to put a WeatherXM there. I want to put a Helium miner there. I think that could eventually help the ecosystem to do better for sure.
Yeah, I love it. I think you guys are thinking in the right direction, and I love that you're building tools that are going to be really helpful for the space because it's important. And as people keep getting these new hardware tools to deploy, you're going to need other ancillary software to enable that and keep making it a reality and make it easier and more attainable. So I really salute you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We're excited, man. Look, when we started off, the ecosystem was only compromising Helium. It was just Helium in the whole space. It was just them. Now there's so many different projects and so many more to come. So it's a super exciting space to be in right now.
It's only going to keep growing from here and getting more exciting, I think. So we're on the early stage, even early. You were on the really early stage with just doing IoT, but I think we're still in the early days, and so I'm excited to see where it grows from here.
Yeah, next up is going to be what I want to see is usage. That's when I'm going to be super excited. Once we start seeing lots of usage, and I think I was looking at some of the stats of Helium Mobile, and it's kind of looking good. It's not bad.
Yeah. Some of those offload data metrics are looking really compelling.
Yeah. Look, if Helium does a good job with that data offloading, it's going to inspire a lot of different people to be more interested in the space for sure.
Yeah, I think that rising tide is going to lift a lot of boats, and it's going to happen across various verticals. It won't just be related to carrier offload. It's going to be in all the different types of business models that can leverage this DePIN, this DePIN model. And so I'm quite excited to see how that starts to transpire over time.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's another thought that I had. It's just for people who are in the space, who are buying miners, there's sometimes maybe in the sometimes having a hard time to deploy these miners. You're sometimes like, they have to troubleshoot them, but that's not part of being in a brand new industry. When you're in a brand new industry, you're going to have these issues, you're going to have these things, but you also have the rewards of being in a brand new industry. You're first mover in the States. So it's a double-edged sword, because, we sell hardware. So we speak with all our customers who are sometimes frustrated by their miners not working exactly like it was expected to. But at the same time, you're also getting the, big rewards for being early on. So
yeah, it pays to be early. And I think in this case, given the potential and the prospects and seeing a little bit of that traction starting to happen, I think it's the promise is certainly there.
Absolutely. And maybe the last note on the DePIN tracker thing. So right now it's free, where it's available for free for everyone. And I think our goal will be to make it, before we start charging for it, what we really want to do is like blow away users. Like we want to show users that, hey, this is crazy, and we want to see the metrics being super up. So it's going to be free for now. It's going to be free for some time, until we really see metrics that actually tells us that, hey, look, we could potentially charge for this because it would be fair for us also, because we're delivering so much value. So for now, the tool is absolutely free, and anybody could try it, could add their miners, and could manage their fleet until further notice.
Okay, that's awesome. I think it's only fair to at some point monetize and make a little bit of money off of this value add that you're building for the space, especially if people have got a lot of hardware that they're using and tracking to the side. That only seems to make sense.
Yeah. We push the monetizing strategy as far as we could. Like we push it, and we would just want to deliver more value, see the metrics be up, and only then we're like, okay, look, we can charge a little bit for that. That has been our philosophy since the beginning.
Great.
Our Explorer still now is like totally free. So
yeah. And do you foresee the Explorer being sort of free forever? Is that the thought on the Explorer side, at least?
Yeah, for sure. We see it being free for a very, very long time. Like even forever. We have no plans of converting that to a paid Explorer or anything in the sort. We think it's a tool that we go from the conclusion that, look, this is a tool that people really, really need to depend on. And if you make it pay, then, the ecosystem as a whole is going to have a little bit of a trouble on getting the data. And we would just break the ecosystem. So we don't want to break it. We want to help it. And we want to like over help it and then charge a little bit for what we're helping. So that is how we do it.
Well, I think it's very equitable from your standpoint that after people they've done the research, you've enabled them to make an informed decision to purchase hardware. They're going to be able to monetize that hardware after they've been able to make the informed decision using your tools, that you're able to, take a little bit of that with something like the DePIN tracker tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And the very cool thing about our industry, because I've been in different industries before. I've been, for example, in the food industry. I had a food app. And the really cool part about our industry really is that every player is new and every player is a startup, which is super cool. And you got a lot of different players. You got like the Helium Geek guys, you got the Hotspotty guys, you got Hearing, which is a startup, and Demo, which is a startup. But you're just dealing with all the different startups trying to create products. And like we got your podcast, like there's all these different players just trying to add value. And it's super cool because in other industries, like let's say I compared it to the food industry, all these players are already like established players, big players, and there's no room for new people coming in. But in their space, anybody that has an idea, anybody that wants to contribute value, that wants to make content, video, software, sales, products, new DePIN, has the opportunity of creating in that space. So it's really interesting.
The other thing that's great about not only the fact that it's a bunch of startups, but just the ethos in general is everybody's really excited about working with one another. And there's a synergistic aspect of when they do work together, there's sort of this 1 and 1 equals 3 outcome. Yeah. And so that's exciting. And there's this zeitgeist in the air that's created as a function of that. And I just get inspired because, you see, Demo leveraging Helium and you see, I love watching all of that happen in real time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. Like you said, like there's all these mini teams that are getting together to create stuff, even deployments, even like, we worked with Demo on a contest like 2 months ago. Demo's working with Helium. We work tightly with Helium Geek on sharing, like Helium Geek provides us a lot of data. So there's all these different teams, and even the deployment, within the deployment ecosystem, people are collaborating together across different cities. It is that, yeah, people are coming together and they're creating value. It is super interesting. Something that you don't see in other industries. You just don't see that.
You don't. It's a huge plus for our space, without question.
Yeah. And you know what? It makes sense. For any space that is brand new, there's going to be a lot of problems to be solved. The opportunities are vast. They're huge. There's a lot of unsolved problems. And in our space, that's what it is. People are coming in. They're like, wow, I can do this. I can solve this problem. I can solve this problem. So it's a great space for creators.
Right. Even projects that have some overlap in terms of the problem that they're solving, like there's some friendly competition and, you see a little bit of back and forth between folks that have their opinions on whatnot. But overall, you do seem to have people that are trying to support both initiatives being successful, because at the end of the day, they are both startups, and one succeeding is going to mean everybody succeeds.
100%. There's a back and forth, but it's all love. I'm sure
it's all love. Yeah.
Yeah, they know. Like if one of them like makes it big, the other one is gonna make it big too. The competition is really the status quo. Like it's definitely not these startups competing in this space. It's the status quo. Any of these startups that does super well, it's gonna be good for every other startups in this space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Emilio, this has been awesome, man. This has been one of the more fun podcast episodes I've got to do. A, because we've had a really fun conversation just chatting about what's going on. B, I love you're in a unique position because you're not just a DePIN project that's building something using this model, but you're building tools that's really helping DePIN succeed, and I love that. That's kind of core to what we do at the podcast layer, and I think it's really important for the space, for people that are getting involved, and I want to help you guys be successful, and I'm excited for what you're doing, man. I think it's amazing.
Appreciate that, fella. It was a really, really good conversation. Anytime you want to have it again, let me know. Happy to jump back in, and thanks for having me, man.
I appreciate it. So we'll absolutely be sure to link all of the tools that you have in the description. We'll share that. We'll have the Explorer, the DePIN Tracker tool. Be sure to go check it out. If you are a deployer, be sure to get onto the DePIN Tracker tool, start using it. I think we'll wrap it up there for everybody. We appreciate you tuning in, and we want to thank Emilio for joining, and we'll see you all in the next one. Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Absolutely, man.